Good morning. This is the June 17th meeting of the Outreach and Advocacy Committee. And I sent the agenda at some point. I'll find it. I guess we'll do our usual. Any points? I mean, most of the testimony from Wednesday was related to assessment and accountability. So I'm guessing they will handle follow-up. Was there anything anybody else picked up that we need to follow up on?
I don't think so.
Okay, let A and A handle that funness. What do okay, so the bulk of today's meeting, we want to focus on the family engagement work. I guess a quick update on the sexual assault work and any new business, and that should have us out. I think that was the agenda that I emailed a while ago. That's coming off the top of my head. Family engagement materials were sent. I know Representative Gassoy was able to provide feedback. I have not reviewed that feedback, but we'll start with the bare bones document. I'll just kind of give a summary of what I was thinking in my head. Emily, then you can provide your feedback for the group. And then we can talk about other additions or what we want to do with that. So I'll share what I sent two documents. I guess I can share screen. One kind of being a, Alex, when you get a chance, can you provide screen sharing abilities?
Malayo host, so she'll have to make you co-host, Carly.
Okay, I'll stop calling your name then. Malayo, you can screen sharing ability. So one is kind of like a one pager and trying to really get it stuck to one page of what the ESSA standards are, kind of borrowing from Aussie's ESSA family engagement, what is the thing called, chart. And kind of doing almost like action research where you might be out this summer at a book bag drive or a barbecue or, I don't know, flyering at a grocery store. And it's really quick, kind of a, hey, what is your school doing related to family engagement? Our purpose is to kind of like pull out themes of what are our LEAs doing a lot of, and then what are some of the family engagement work that may have some spots or techniques or something related to ESSA that might not be being utilized the most. And then while we're out there as well, recruiting family members who might be really interested, because we're trying to get diversity in families, to possibly engage with us in the fall for a deeper dive into the ESSA family engagement standards. So that's one. The other document is essentially the same thing, but it's a PowerPoint. So this is more that you would possibly share, like if you're invited to a civic association meeting, maybe, I know most of our ed councils have wrapped for this summer, but maybe if there is like one in September before we start the fall engagement, or any kind of community meeting, a more sit down formal, you have like 30 minutes to present at some opportunity that is projected. So you have options on how to use this information. I sent it in bare bones, because we're going to basically turn it over to Malayo, Caitlin, the team to do like graphic design on it. But basically you just see the content. All right, so that was me going through that. Would it be helpful to show that information? Oh, let me see if I got it. Yay, okay, cool. So while I was giving an overview, and forgive me, I've stopped fooling with Google's, margins. They won at 10 o'clock on a Friday night whenever I did this. So I figured our great formatting folks can do this. But essentially, we were thinking, we are going to convene folks, parents, families related to in the engagement standards, but we're also going to be flexible in the sense of when we get this convening or the convening happens, the true nature of getting feedback is being flexible. So they might come up and they, we present this information, they say like, well, actually, we want to focus on something else. So we are being flexible. We figured an opening point will at least be like, this is how people, according to ESSA, should be engaging with you. So at the top, you kind of have a purpose. The middle are the standards. And it's kind of just like a checklist. So I think this information more like collected by us. So, I mean, we could possibly give it to the families, but it's more like information that we keep and we're going to code for themes. But, does your school do this? Or how does your school do this? Kind of columns. And then some follow-up questions of, what family engagement practices are you most aware of? Are there some types of engagement that are done well? What engagement are done badly? What types of engagement are missing across the board based on like, here's what the standards are. So that's the, what is this? That's the long version of this. Essentially the PowerPoint looks exactly the same with all this information, just in slides. All right, so that's my spiel. Emily, do you want to provide, I know you sent your feedback in, so you want to start?
Sure. I will say, actually, your explanation right now expanded my understanding of what this would be for. I was imagining this as more like as a conversation starter. And so I was envisioning it more like we're sitting down at an engagement session and families have this as a starting point and then we discuss it. So now that I'm thinking of it as, it sounds like that's a yes and, like you're also thinking of it as
I mean, this could be something
as a way to, as to like to gather research or gather data for us, which is cool. As I mentioned in my email, I think it's great how simple it is. But one thing I would say is like some of the language you've pulled directly from, how OSSI has conveyed it, which is fine. But I guess I would think about whether we want to make it more simple, like the third one, section 1116A 2A that talks about LEA Title I. I don't know if everybody knows what LEA is or what Title I is and all of that, right? So that's one thing, is simplifying that language, or not simplifying, but just translating it for people who don't know the acronyms and stuff. Sorry, the kitten is bothering me. And then the other stuff was really just like the questions at the bottom. It says based on the standards above. So I don't know if you want to scroll down so folks can see that. Yeah, I added some stuff. I tweaked some language. Like for the second, what would be the second bullet?
You want to share your marked up copy?
If it would be helpful, sure.
I think I have it. Hold on 1 second. I have it in my email. Because you're saying that your comments are, okay, 1 second, let me just.
Are just at the bottom in red. So
okay, it'll just
some
be...
of it's just tweaked language, but I did make some additions. So I mean, I don't think in the sort of broad terms we're talking right now, I don't know if it really matters. This would be more for like, yeah, I don't know, but yeah, share it.
Okay, can you see it now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Wait, go all the way, scroll. There you go.
Okay.
So yeah, I guess I would say, like, for the first one, which family engagement practices above or otherwise are you involved with? So there may be some things the school do that are not part of those, but are still useful. Yeah, the second one was just changing language. And then I added a few at the bottom here. Which types of engagement do you think are most needed to support or empower families in your school from the list above or otherwise? And then would you be interested in work? So what I was thinking is, your idea of having the QR code, like having that on this as well, and just having this be part of the recruitment plan, even if it's for gathering data. You can still see if folks would be interested. So just adding that question. And then my other point in the email was just, we've talked on the ANA committee about securing some of the funding for this fiscal year for public engagement. And so I'm wondering if we would want to team up on that, with the timing being what it is, and the end of the school year already upon us. We were thinking of early September. That's kind of like the absolute last date or month that we would be able to spend money, I think, for this fiscal year, and we'd have to plan it now. So So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Anyone else? Scott, no,
I mean, I think
okay.
so. I know Representative Gassoy kind of backed off the word simple, but I don't think simple is wrong. I think simple is good. Because a lot of times the way standards are written, it is technical language, which is the absolute opposite of simple. So I think simple is important. I think the thing I'm trying to square, or the round peg I'm trying to square, is the difference between a school and an LEA, because the standards are written for school districts. They're not written for individual schools. And in some cases, schools are the LEA and sometimes they're not. And so like with, I don't know if you can scroll back up, but when I think about reach out to all parents and family members, like, is it that does somebody like our family engagement team central office count? Or are we actually asking like if a school is doing this well? And are people going to see the differences? Or even like, I think there's something on here about a parent board or something. Like I know the chancellor has a advisory board that would count. I was for DCPS because it's LEA level. That probably, I could see people responding here and talking about if their school has like a PTA or other things. And so I do think it's really important that like we do some, we have to figure out how to like, and I don't know what all the language is, but maybe like not using LEA, maybe using district or like something that helps people understand like what level we're talking. I think in a lot of these cases, examples might be helpful. I'm also thinking about what it looks like to code and distill the feedback on the back end. So what is the balance between open-ended responses and like multiple choice or something else, or even like if something like a Likert scale will be helpful here, because there could be degrees of this. Like a lot of this is not yes or no.
Sky, did you want to jump in? Otherwise, I have a sort of add on to that.
Sorry, my dogs are bouncing around in the background. I'm not sure if you guys can hear them, but I was going to say, I think setting an example is also like a really super and strong and helpful idea, because even as a student and as a member of the youth myself, sometimes I have troubles like processing the language that is used when we are reading the amendments and the documents. So I think language is also a super important factor to kind of weigh in. And I definitely do agree with the simplifying of the language that we're using. And I also think that another thing that we can kind of add to the list as far as like revisions is there maybe something that we could add that could maybe be geared towards student engagement specifically, as a question or as a background like factor to kind of ask or weigh in?
I think that's a great idea, actually, because obviously students are part of families, right? And they may know different information, you know, about what happens on the ground than their families. So I love that idea. And just adding on to what you were saying, Ebony Rose, I guess, you know, I'm not sure. I would have to think more if it makes sense to use this as a data collection tool. I think I would have to look at it. I wasn't looking at it that way. Like I said, I was looking at it as like a conversation. We would have this as something that we then discuss. So we would be able to answer questions about, you know, even if we simplify the language and spell out the acronyms, people might think of, like Ebony Rose is saying, may think of a parent advisory board as PTO. and we're not thinking about it in the same way, right? So I think it's important to be able to talk through these things. And if we want to collect data, I think we would want to think about it, you know, like I would need to go back and review it that way, with that
Yeah.
eye.
In my head, I'm also thinking like a conversation, especially like a conversation is data, especially if people are saying the same thing. So I can see it like sitting down to your points about like, you know, if you sit down with it, have a conversation with someone with it, and you're hitting some markers. I also think based on the conversations, we might need to identify like what is more meaningful to, because the language of the standard, which I mean, I'm okay with like it going and we, you know, I didn't want to misinterpret the standard, but the standard does have LEA in it. So I'm curious, would it make more sense to collect information on schools or versus LEA? Does that make sense? Versus LEAs?
Yeah.
Like what would be more meaningful possibly to folks? Because I definitely can get how you could, you know, certain things can get a little gray.
Well, it's convoluted because OSCE is responsible for conveying to the LEA, and then the LEA is responsible for conveying to the schools, right? And then the schools are responsible for implementing or, you know, adhering to. So, and, you know, I think the only oversight sort of is schools submit a plan. And so maybe one of the questions is, are you aware of your school's family engagement plan? Because they are supposed to have one that is responsive to these standards. And that would be interesting just to know, you know, I, as a family member at my kid's school, I know there is one, but that's probably because more from this position I'm in than the parent position, right? Like, I don't know if I would have looked for that. So, and I don't know how much it matters. I mean, I think this really matters, but it might be another question we want to ask just so that we can get to the discussion of it.
Yeah, I mean, I am digesting what you're saying. It might be, so here's the thoughts forming in my head. So thought one, if the purpose of the larger work is around the standards for family engagement, then I do think you want to know how this is playing out at a district level, because that's what the standards, like, that's what standards are about. I wonder if there is a way to help bridge the just the grain size as far as things you would expect to see at a school level if you were a parent, if your LEA is doing the following things. So instead of saying like may set an LEA level parent advisory board, maybe the question is like, has your school reached out to you about the advisory board? And like you could have an example, like i.e. The chancellor's parent cabinet or something else, some other examples for charters, right? Because so again, like you want, if the purpose of the work is to give feedback and help parents help and support parents in accessing that and being part of that process, then you need the information to like that feedback loop to be complete about those things. If not, then you're going to get information about other things, and then like the conversation will be disconnected. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I was thinking while you were speaking between like what you're saying and the concepts of like Sky was saying of examples. I'm thinking if we write instead of putting the standard in there, because we would know what the standards are, but instead maybe in these boxes, right? Like you were saying, things that you would see at a school if the LEA were following it. And that would help do the simplification of language.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would leave a space for other, maybe, so they can write in stuff. But it also, I was thinking, on the original draft plan, I shared with Dan and Serena, one of the options or something that I had put on there was, that I have heard from families who have served on the various parent advisory boards, that they often feel perfunctory. And they really felt strongly that that was an important issue to address. I'm not sure how to broach that, but we may want to ask parents if they've already served on a parent advisory board for their LEA. Because that could be part of the conversation to them.
Okay. So would it be a good use of our time, maybe if we can, I know it will be a good use of our time, if we can maybe go down these lines and kind of just throw in some ideas about what it would look like to help kind of editing this document to do the draft, and we can make it look better. But like that whole framing of what both Representative Thompson and Representative Johnson were talking about, what would be some examples or sample language even for if LEA was doing this, how parents would be interpreting it. So for this reach out to all parents and family members, what would be examples of how we could rewrite it so that, and we don't have to get this all right. We can also go back and get more information from parents and families. But
Sky, no, I was just gonna ask Sky if you're aware of how your school communicated with your family, like were there multiple modes of communication that you were aware of?
No. There weren't any like multiple ways of communication. If anything, any important information that we had to receive was via automated email or a call that would be sent out to all parents.
So automated calls, and so maybe the question, yeah. We could give some examples of, how different schools communicate. My school usually has like a every Tuesday newsletter update, and then also, emails as needed, especially during COVID, and automated messages for like reminding us of things that are coming up or days off and things like that. So I don't know if you want to put like, for example, blah, 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 and then maybe space for writing something in.
I think that's helpful.
Okay. I kind of just wrote in right here something. I'm also thinking that piece about family members, because for me, it was also extended family, like the best person to not get in contact. Like my mom was not the best person to call in the middle of a workday. It was actually my neighbor who became my aunt. I'm also thinking about a family who, grandma is currently the best person, at least because grandma really wants his child to get a seat. So she's like, look, don't call mom, call me. I'll get up there and get the enrollment material directly to you. So I'm wondering about this piece on this side too, about the family members, and then also acknowledging that a lot of folks' networks are extended family.
For the next one, Carlene, I think that one is the one I would just put, are you aware? Because I think every school is required to have one.
Mm.
So I guess the question would be, are you aware of it, or have you, do you know where to find something like that, maybe? I don't know.
I think it's two layers of questions. One is like, are you aware? Are you aware of, so like, are you aware of the policy, right? What the policy is and where to find it or something like that. I think the other layer is literally like, do you know of opportunities to, do you know of any opportunities to be part of the development or something like that? Simpler than that, but you know what I mean? Like, because it's the standard is not that they just have a policy, it's both that they have a policy and they are engaging people around the development of policy.
Yeah, it actually does say that, doesn't it? Jointly develop.
Yeah.
So I wonder, I mean, that is interesting wording. I hadn't really zeroed in on that, but does that imply that it's like an annual revisiting with families? Is that what they're supposed to be doing? I know they have to resubmit it every year, I think. That's a good question, actually. Do you know of any, Rose? Do they need to resubmit?
I'm not sure it has to be rewritten every year. I do know that, like, and this would have been a long time ago, but when I worked for DCPS doing like family engagement stuff, this was something the family engagement office helped with and tried to create opportunities for families to be part of. And it looked not so much different ways from different schools, but the way we approached it was really focused on like, what are the things that schools are doing with their Title I funds? Because there is a large variety of uses of those funds, and it's helpful for families to be part of the, how are you going to deploy resources? Because if they're for family engagement, it kind of is helpful for people to say, here's what, not just like what topics I want to be engaged around, but here's how we plan to go about that. So you're not guessing.
Cool. I'm kind of plugged in those. This one is a little involve parents in the development of the LEA Title I plan and I gotta double check that if that's a typo or not. Involve parents in development. I thought I just copied and pasted, but I might have messed it up. Involve parents in development of the LEA Title I plan and support and improvement plan. I guess those might be two different plans. If school is identified for targeted or comprehensive support under the accountability system. So
It's
this
like an LSAT role, seems like. It's very specific. I don't know, actually. I feel like I looked at these and I was like, now I'm like, okay, what does that actually look like?
I'm also thinking it's awareness. Like, do folks know, it's that accountability system piece that their school might be? First, I need to know, is it true that all DCPS schools are Title I?
They all now qualify for free, like if you look at every school, it's 100% free and reduced lunch. So that is not a marker anymore, like that actually designates anything, right? Like it doesn't actually mean, it's just they've decided that every school will be able to offer all kids free lunch. But I know that doesn't mean it's Title I. So why are you asking that? Is that something that?
Oh, because this one involved parents in development of the LEA Title I plan and support and improvement plan. If school is identified for targeted or comprehensive support under the accountability system. So one, I'm just kind of curious, like if, going back to our points of if we're engaging with families with this sheet or whatever, and trying to create examples, would families know, like, if they are a Title I school, what's that plan? And then do families know if they are receiving targeted or comprehensive support for the accountability system? So I think it's almost like it's probably multiple questions in one, but one part is about Title I LEA plans, and then the other one seems like it's like comprehensive support and accountability. So Title I and then ESSA accountability stuff. Or is that same?
I don't think they're all Title I. I mean, they shouldn't be.
Okay.
I think it's just a if you are.
Okay. 'Cause I was just wondering, there'll be parents who might not realize they are or not, if they are or are not in a Title I school. But I guess that's also like maybe a school comms piece too, like knowing that you're in a school that has a targeted or comprehensive support plan.
Yeah. I mean, that's not something that's interesting.
Mhm.
This-
Like I remember at one point it was like mandatory, and I think that changed under ESSA. Certain notices still have to come out. So I worked at a school that was the LEA in the school. It was a single site. And like we would have to send certain notices home to like let folks know. And it was a letter, so we probably really weren't letting all folks know. But like oh, your teachers are, you're in a classroom where a teacher is not certified, or this is what we kind of rated, or we had to like send some sort of information. I'm not sure what that looks like now, because I know this was pre-ESSA. Okay, that's one that's probably going to have to be broken down. It's a really technical one that I don't think most parents would know, but I think we can break it down and keep it, but figure out how to address it. Anything jump out for do we hit all these? Yeah. Anything jump out for the ones under here? So wait, did we talk about this? Yeah, we did. We started building capacity of participating Title I schools for parent and family engagement, which may include meaningful consultation with employers, business leaders, philanthropic organizations, or individuals with expertise. So I kind of, as Rose was talking, started tucking in like, what are schools, I think might be the one, but I'm not sure. What are schools doing with Title I funds? How are resources deployed for family engagement? Thinking like awareness of partnerships. I often feel like we have a lot of organizations in the community who are interested in connecting with schools, but feel like they like bump into roadblocks for getting those resources to the schools.
Sorry, where are you now? Okay.
116A 2B.
Yeah, I mean, so the way I read this, it's the standard is like the district should be building capacity of and supporting schools and getting this done. So I think it's good to know. I mean, yeah, you want to know what schools are, I guess you want to know a base. I don't know if you want to know a baseline. Like if what you're hoping to get out of this is like, what is the baseline? What are people already doing? Where do they need support from the district? If that's what you're hoping to get back to be able to engage people around the standard. Does that make sense? Like I'm trying to track like what we're hoping.
Yeah.
Before I say what I think like we should be.
Yeah.
And I do have to jump off probably in about 5 minutes.
Okay.
Can I jump in real quick? Because I think I'm getting some clarity right now.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, I know, let's see if I can grab it. Originally, this goes back to what I was saying about sharing this with Dan and Serena, and the thing that they really sort of got excited about was that like having parents take on the issue of, something that felt perfunctory that maybe could be better, both because it felt perfunctory and maybe it could also be expanded to include like a charter DCPS parent board that worked together. So those were some ideas that were exciting. And I'm just bringing that up because I think ultimately what I was imagining, and it doesn't mean we have to go this way, but this is what I was imagining, was whatever we latched onto, the idea would be that we would be convening parents, but ultimately it would be to empower families to work with their schools to improve family engagement. The standards can be used to help with that, right? Like it's more a tool, both to look at like what's already in there to guide like how, you know, this is what's supposed to be happening, but what's actually happening. And what I was thinking more is that families would identify things that are actually could be better in their schools, and then looking at the standard that correlated with that, corresponded with that, and sort of bringing that back to their school community to work on improving that standard. Does that make sense? So instead of starting with like, are all these standards up to par in your school? It was more like, let's find out just on a lay level, like for lay folks, what does family engagement feel like in your school? Have you been involved in a parent advisory board? If so, how has that felt? And are there issues in your school or with the, you know, communication between school and system that could be better? And then let's like use the standards to help with that. Does that make sense? Did I like actually grab the clarity? I don't know. But so if that's the case, then I think I don't know if we need the standards at all in this first part. I think the first part is really about hearing from families. We can use the standards to sort of guide the questions we ask. But ultimately, what we want to hear is, what does it feel like? Like, do you feel like your school communicates well with you? Do you know about these opportunities to like be a representative for your school, you know, speaking to the district, and kind of going from there?
Do you think may not need standards or just keep the examples still? Like, what are your thoughts? Because I think what we were trying
I think
to do
having
for the
examples.
I was just making sure the conversation doesn't fall on like, we don't have a PTO. Like, I guess kind of showing like, these are all the things that could be happening. Because sometimes I think when people say family engagement, it'll sometimes the conversation will end up on like, we don't have a PTO, we need to have more PTOs, or they just text me all the time. And like, here's like the full menu of all the things that should be happening, maybe with examples. And then like let the conversation happen, just to give people like, oh, here are all the things I can be talking about, or yeah, I didn't see that, or yeah, I do see that, or maybe they did give me a family engagement policy and I didn't realize that was a family engagement policy, which is still an issue. So I was just kind of thinking like, how do we make folks aware of what should be happening to also guide the conversation and hear them out about what it feels like.
Yeah, I don't think it hurts to have the standards there. Maybe it is like a one pager, but two-sided.
Yeah,
so
like,
you have the standards on one side and then
like conversation questions, and then like, here's the menu on the back.
Because I think having a PTO is actually really important, and it's not necessarily spelled out on here, but that is a very telling, you know, piece of information actually. And yeah, I don't know. I don't think they all have to. I think it would be best if we could like figure out questions that track with the standards, but are more aligned with what we know actually happens in schools or doesn't happen in schools, so that it makes sense to folks and they're more likely to be productive conversation starters, you know.
Like we might have arrived to a one pager, two sides. Go ahead, Emily.
I want to offer something that I don't know if we're considering it or not. So I think an assumption I have is that there are opportunities for conversation, and there are opportunities for things that are more like tools that are more like survey based, and both are valuable because you're going to need both types of interactions, because you're not going to have time to have a conversation with everyone, and then you're going to and you want like a variety of responses. I mean, I know what we did with the board governance materials is essentially we're getting at the same topics, we're asking many of the same questions, but there are levels or dosages, I'll say, different types of tools that are doing that. Like the way it's the same questions in the 40-minute version for the most part, or the same goal of the 40-minute version as far as the information we're trying to get as it is in the 15-minute I'm a visitor version, as it is that we're trying to collect from the survey. And you just have to construct them differently, because we know that just like us, families need a variety of ways to interact. So maybe that's something we should consider. Like maybe we are trying to make the one pager do too much, and be the like, and it is helpful for us to talk through like what are the ideas, what is it we want to accomplish through the engagement, and then kind of separate it out to like what do the different versions of that look like.
Yeah. Another thought is, Teaching for Change used to have a really robust family engagement program. And they went into schools and did really was very sort of deep work with the community. But they have great questions that they ask, actually. So, maybe, all right, we need a deadline, I think. And so maybe, we work on a deadline and we try to figure out what it is, how best to start this off. But ultimately the working group would be sort of, I think the idea would be to use the standards as a tool to kind of see is our school supposed to be doing this? Where does this fit in? Because another thing I'm thinking of that's not on here necessarily is language access, and does your school send out information, in your native language, and that's something that I know for my ward anyway is a big deal, right? I think now all our schools do, but yeah, I know other wards may not as much because it's not as clear, or concentrated. So maybe my inclination, I think this format is good. I think what we have to nail down is what are the questions we're hoping families will answer. It's two-pronged, right? We want information, but we also want them to be engaged and excited about then addressing the issues that are meaningful. So we want these questions to surface sort of the questions I think families will really enjoy hearing from each other. That's what I imagine, is the conversation, once it gets going, will be really rich. But I agree it should be somewhat guided, by questions. And
so
yeah.
I'm also hearing well, then maybe this format might be good for the whatever engagement, which we need clarity on. Are we allowed to do family engagement, that council? Are we going to marry this to, I think, a fall engagement? Because it sounds like this would be a good format for the family engagement, but I don't know if people feel comfortable. I guess I do this all this often. I don't know if people feel comfortable taking this format. It might need to be another format and using it on the streets to just be State Board of Education is working on some family engagement right now. I would do this very often during COVID. I'd be should schools open all the way up? And that was data collection for me. To help guide, okay, what will be my decision, or what should I be saying, we're at these hearings, et cetera. So I want an element of if we are in the streets talking to folks, how do members collect feedback? Because those points are the people that we're not gonna be able to get at a table at a family engagement session, but they're very important points to gather.
Yeah.
And also there are going to be opportunities for deeper conversations for people who want to see what was the standard. And then also we need guiding questions. Because I'm also very much empowering parents is informing parents of their legal standards. There are standards that you also have that you should be familiar with, especially if you're call yourself if you're a parent advocate. definitely that education piece, but then also wanting to hear from parents as well. And there might be parents who also can spit out these standards, to one another. So I'm kind of curious about. So
Yeah.
I guess what would that kind of like that quick component look like? I guess is my question.
Do you have a sense of like what families, again, like just knowing your school community,
Mhm.
like would it be a 3-question thing with a QR code they could like find more information on, or like, yeah, is there anything that you have a sense would be more successful than another in terms of format?
Yeah, because I kind of like the almost. I wonder if members can fill out a survey, like a something while they're talking to people, or after they talk to people, because I'm also kind of like, I think
Good idea.
I know survey
Yeah.
saturation. And I think that's what we've always talked about, like what are other tools in our toolbox, or can be other tools when we're collecting information from families. And I think surveys are helpful, but I think we use it a lot. And not saying we shouldn't stop doing it because we use it a lot, but it's like, what else can we do? So I'm almost thinking like, what if members had this like survey on their phone, and like not being awkward when you're talking to people, because you don't want to be on your phone while you're talking to people, but like, okay, maybe after you're done, you're like, boom, 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 hit submit in a Google form. And then, all of a sudden you have this sheet of what were quick little testimonial spots that we caught during the summer. And then in the fall, maybe we start using this, or not in the fall, start using this thing we're looking at now, be the vehicle for the conversation whenever we have our sit down parent engagement council, whatever that thing is, the longer conversation.
I think that method is actually really super helpful, because now it'll push us members to actually get that engagement and really take feedback from constituents and families, and actually kind of, I don't know, I also feel like it just kind of it forms a bond with the families almost. It's like we're actually putting effort out into the community to value their feedback and their input, versus like, hey, here's the survey. And they're probably like, another survey, like, what is this? I'm not filling this out. So I definitely think that's really helpful.
Okay. Cool. I think it'll be fun to try.
I love that. Yeah, I really do. And now that I'm like back in campaign mode, I remember like it really is, there's something just really bonding, like you're saying, Skyly, like you're talking to people, not everybody wants to talk to you, but the people who do, you're like talking to somebody who didn't know you 30 seconds ago, and then like you're talking about something meaningful. There's something I think really powerful about it. So I like that format, and I would be eager to do it actually. And I think if it was like 3 to 5 questions that we have, like, so that there's something standard, we're all more or less collecting the same data, but it could go from there, right? Like if somebody really wanted to talk, you could collect more. And I think, as with campaigning, having something people can do is also nice, right? Like they don't have to, but if there is a QR code or some date or something you can give them to then take the next step if they're interested, I think that's really good too. So.
Yeah, like with that example that you just gave, like that, the talker, like, all right, I want to get you signed up for our family engagement council, like here, also like, so we collected all the data about like, information from you about like, oh, this is how you experience family engagement standards. And like, you seem really interested, here, sign up. And then they can fill that out, using the QR code. So I think this is helpful, because I think I like the pivot, because I know this can be a wonky form to have in public. But I think if members had like a Google form, and no pressure to like fill in every data point that might be on it, but it'd be cool to watch members collect information through conversations with people. So cool, this has been helpful. I never know when our meeting's supposed to end, but but I think we thank you all for your points. I really appreciate walking through the document, inserting your comments, and the thoughtfulness and the trajectory that kind of shifted a bit, but in a good way, to keep the work going forward, but then also like provide, good feedback, meaningful feedback for what our fall engagement. I wasn't expecting that this would do our fall, but I'm like, yay, guess what? Now we're almost done with that material.
Yeah,
So we are
yeah.
ahead of the ball. We just got to do
Great.
our Google Doc for sign up, and we just got to do maybe taking some of these questions, make life easier that we created, and get these in a Google form, and so for members to be able to enter. And I also think like it helps with possibly some of the language aspects component. We also have to get more information about that. But I'm like, if I'm talking to a parent, we'll have to think about that piece. But at least members can enter the information, for folks. Blah blah. Okay, so the sexual assault. I know the doodle poll is closing today. Thank you, Maleo, at 12 p.m. And we'll have a tentative date, and then we'll switch over to getting the agency partners. So I thank you. I think Skylar, you signed up, right? I think I saw like all the student reps are like boom, boom, boom. Like literally, I could see a quick little I think Malay gave me a preview of who signed up, and I think I was like student rep. So thank y'all for signing up. And then that piece will help. We met with Ebony Rose and I met with the Student Advisory Council on Monday and shared with them the draft, and they gave really good feedback to what could be added. And then the next component will be this panel, which will kind of tell us more about what should be happening in DC in the case of an unfortunate event, and then we can bump that against like what we were aware of is happening based on Student Advisory Council feedback, the Ward 2 situation, Ward 8, and then any other situations that we know have happened in the city, and then make our resolution from there.
Have you started reaching out to potential panelists? Like, was there a discussion? I can't remember now if we discussed.
Yeah, Malaya will be working on inviting agency partners of student advocate. I think we're trying to get someone from DCPS Title IX's office, DME, OSSI. Are there any partners y'all think we might be missing from? We probably need to ask somebody from CFSA.
I think so. I think one of the things that came out of that conversation last time was, I think, I don't know if we would actually get what we need to hear in a public panel. But I'm just going to say, like, one of the issues is it's complicated on the ground, right? And there are like a million different scenarios. And I think that's where you hit like why didn't you do this, or why did you wait, or why, and it's a story. And I'm not sure, as I'm saying it, like it would make sense to even ask school staff, because
I think that's not.
But is there a way to collect that information? I don't know.
I think that's one of the reasons why I wasn't excited about the panel. But as I self-reflected, I try to do that. And hearing from the students on Monday, and talking to Representative Thompson, I think that we will at least hear from our agency heads of what should already be happening. Like, what are the policies? I don't think, and I think based on what we're all talking about in feedback, like we are not all familiar with the current policies that should be, or even the process of what should have happened, like with step A, step B, step C, like what is in the perfect world, what should have happened? I think that at least frames it a little bit, so that in our resolution, we're not wasting time with any information that is already happening. And that's something I told Representative Thompson, and said it again in the Student Advisory Council meetings. We're really trying to make sure that, our resolution doesn't become just a resolution, but something that people feel. And like, our student advisory team was talking about some of the, like harassment, especially of our LGBTQ plus youth, the teacher training that needs to be put in place. So I want to like kind of keep in my mind all the stories that I'm aware of and how they were handled, and then hear like, all right, so what's supposed to happen? And then kind of go from there of like, okay, well, I know what's supposed to happen now. And then now I know from the stories I've heard on the ground of this is where the miscommunication happened. Or this is how the process doesn't protect children. Like if you talk to Representative Chang, he's like, yeah, we got all the processes he felt in his case, but it was the inconsistent implementation or following of those processes, which has caused the breakdown in years of what was going on for his incident. My incident kind of felt like, oh, they might have followed the process, but the communication was strongly delayed to the family, like the school side, the school community side. So of course, information started spreading like wildfire, which wasn't healthy for the community and probably also not helpful for the student. And even like, can we get some preliminary communication? Because I know they're like, oh, we got to investigate, but it's like, okay, you're investigating for 7 days. Meanwhile, the community is, is in a panic mode and trying to find information from a variety of sources, which is creating another, honestly, monster. Because the story evolved in a way that it just really created a sense of chaos. And the school staff was like, we got it, actually. But, it was a breakdown in communication that should have went out to families, really, I feel like immediately, at least for families to have a cursory conversation with their children of like, hey, everything going okay in school? Are you all right? So yeah. Long story short, the panel hopefully would give us information about what are the current rules.
Right. And then everything you just said, like it's so complicated once it hits the ground in schools, like everything, but just more so, I feel like.
Yeah. So any unnecessary pieces. And like, even for the case, like there was some supports that this, on the side of this, like the family was seeking certain supports. And it's like, okay, so what are supports are in place when this happens? Can we get a child quickly relocated? Which I had to get into Title IX because it does go beyond sports. Which there, maybe there's protection related to victims' rights. So it's like, okay, how do we support students who want to switch now their school location because something tragic has happened at their current location? But actually this conversation is helpful because I don't think we invited anyone from CFSA, and I do know in the current process, CFSA is a step. So I'll email Malaya, but I hope she heard it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Is there anybody in a position where they sort of see what happens in schools, but they are not beholden to, like they wouldn't feel compromised in kind of giving general examples of like things that get funky in reporting? So I'm going to think about that. Like, is there a role in DCPS and or charters? Somebody who's kind of a middle person.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say Dan and Serena. Yeah,
and maybe it is like Dan and Serena. Actually, they probably would be that role.
Yeah, and then maybe CFSA might, I don't know, feel like they're a little enough separated. Skyly, are there any people that you think should be contacted or invited to participate in this conversation, or resources,
The people that I am thinking of would be in connection to the Richard Wright staff and people that I've gained through those connections. So I could possibly reach out to them, and I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, if you can ask them, I mean, they may or may not feel comfortable participating, but if you can at least ask them, like, okay, whenever you intercept this information, who are your partners in the city that you rely on? And even if they are interested in participating, we're more than happy to let them come too. Great. So if y'all can get that to me ASAP. Malaya is closing out the doodle poll today. And I think early next week. So Monday, Tuesday, if you know anybody want to invite, she's going to start sending those invites, coordinating that. So, all right. I think we're good. Yeah. Were there any other outreach and advocacy issues you are aware of? Oh, I will be sending you an email. Someone reached out. They want time with the Outreach and Advocacy Committee. I told them that's not my decision, it's for the committee's decision. So I'll forward you their materials, and you can let me know if it's an appropriate contact to bring before us, or how to make them feel connected to the SBOE work.
I guess I would just ask if there's any feedback from our feedback form, if we know.
Oh,
I did include it in my last email blast, so, and I have been, and I sometimes just do it myself, you know, in the same spirit that we're talking about, like I hear something and I put it in there, but, okay. All
Okay.
right.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm now seeing all the chat. Malaya, can you save the chat and send it to me? I was really just trying to engage a conversation. Alrighty. See y'all next time.
Have a great week.